What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next we've got the next part in my ongoing series on building a comic business starting with just $300. Stay tuned. All right, so before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. Now, don't worry, if you haven't watched the first part yet, you can watch these out of order. I think they'll still be useful, fun, that kind of thing, to get an idea what I'm doing in this series and hopefully help you if this is something that you're interested in, something you want to try to approach with buying and selling comics. So just a quick recap, what this all started with was I had purchased a small collection, a Bronze Age collection, about November of 2022, and that was about 475 or so books. I paid around, I paid $215 for that collection, plus I had about $110 or so in materials like bags and boards because it was unbagged, and so I had about $325 total dollars into this. So what I thought would be interesting to do was treat that like I was starting a new buying and selling comic business with that collection and trying to build that up over time. And I'd make videos as I have sales, new purchases, and address any questions that people have throughout the process, that kind of thing. I just thought it would be something fun. And from the first video, a lot of people really seem to enjoy it, like the idea. So this is the next one in that process. So as part of this video, I'm going to go over any new sales that I've had since the prior video, any new books that I've picked up as part of this business. With those sales, I'll go over all the costs and everything so you can clearly see what I lay out there, what I track. And in the last video, I also had quite a few questions and comments on certain areas of the buying and selling side of the business. I'm not going to be able to address everything in every video, but I'll pick a few of them and try to address them as I can. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask and I'll answer them to the best of my ability as much as I can. So specifically, some of the extras I'm going to touch on in this video are a little more on taxes, because there are a lot of questions on that, selling fees, and shipping fees. All right, so now let's get to where we are today with this collection. So like I said, this was a Bronze Age collection, about 475 books. So far total, I have had 25 separate sales. The first 13 sales were from the first video that I did. That accounted for 193 of the approximately 475 comics. Since that video, I've had 12 more sales that have accounted for 127 additional books. So total now of that 475, I have sold 320 comics. I still have one, if you watch the original unboxing video that I did, I still have one full box of those comics left. So I do still have quite a few books that I need to put out on eBay, do the auctions, all that kind of thing. But I have also picked up additional books, like I showed 2 of them in the prior video, that then I will then list and continue this process, continuing to try to build this comic business by buying and selling comics. So for the most recent 12 sales, because I don't need to recap all of the original 13, for the most recent 12 sales, one was to a watcher of the channel. The rest I sold on eBay via auction. Now, I did have some questions about selling on eBay by auction because I have a more established store, and people said that, you know, if you didn't have as an established of a store, you might not get as high of a price. And yes, that can be true. So if you are brand new, if you don't have a store or anything like that, I would suggest, unless you really want to get the funds going quickly, I would suggest trying fixed price at first to at least ensure that you get a certain amount that you're looking for. And then as you get a more established store, you have a record of sales, then maybe you try auctioning off at that point. Now, the other thing that you can do, and I talked about this in the last video, is that you can use promotions on the auctions. Promotions are, they end up being a pretty high percentage, but for an auction, I think they're definitely worth it because it's just $1.99 per auction for the promotion, and then it will really help your auction get viewed, and it won't matter as much if you don't have a really established presence yet on eBay. So that's definitely something that can help you overcome that. I still use the promotions. I still paid for them, even though I have a pretty established store at this point, just because it's just 7 days. And so I feel like with that limited amount of time, I want to get as many eyes on it as possible. So to me, it was worth it to pay the $1.99 per listing for that promotion fee. Now, I also touched on this in the last video about doing auctions versus fixed price, and at least for the purposes of this, I'm trying to turn these initial set of books around as fast as I can, the ones from that collection. So I'm not as concerned about maximizing my sale number. I'm more concerned about selling the books, getting that money back, and then using it to reinvest into other comics. Now, as I'm picking up additional books, those ones I will tend to fix price. So as I get more expensive comics, those ones I will generally fix price, but this initial set from that collection, I'm using auctions for those. And part of that is because as you sell more and more books, your cost into those books is very low at that point. And so I'm not as concerned about the final sale number. Whereas with a more expensive book, something that I picked up individually, my cost is higher into it and it doesn't get any lower. So I have to have certain numbers that I hit in order for the book to be profitable or worthwhile for me to sell. All right, so now I'm going to put all the sales data up on the screen so you can see all 12 sales, all the details with them and everything. You can see the first one there, that's the Amazing Spider-Man lot. There's a little number next to each one of these. That's how many books was in the lot. That was 32 books. That is what I sold to one of the watchers of the channel. And then the next 3 were from the first week of auctions that I did on eBay since the last video, and the following 8 were from the next week of auctions that I did. Now, that first week of auctions was very frustrating because there were 7 lots that I had listed. I had 5 non-payers. 4 of them were from the same guy, and 1 was from someone else. All those people are blocked now, or those 2 people are now blocked on my eBay store. I don't screw around with that. If you are a non-payer, if you ghost me, anything like that, you're just going to block list. I'm not dealing with it. So those are on the block list. Now, the frustrating thing kind of with eBay is that you have to give them 4 days to pay. And so at the end of 4 days, then you can report them as a non-payer. And then what you can do is you can offer the lots to the next lowest bidder or any bidder that was below that also participated in the auction. So luckily, at least one of them I was able to sell to one of the next lower bidders. I believe that was the Star Trek lot, but the remaining 4 I was not. So I just ended up listing all of those fixed price on eBay again. I'm not going through that auction again with those. And so those ones are just sitting out there and they'll sell whenever they sell. Now the next 8, starting with Conan, those ones, that was great. Everybody paid. so I was very happy with that. Everybody paid pretty quick. I think within about 24 hours, most of them within just a couple hours of the auction ending. So that one was great. So no issues there. But yeah, that's always a frustrating thing when you have people ghost you, don't pay you, that kind of stuff. Now on there, if you remember from the prior video, I've got 6 different pieces of information that I've got for these comics. I have the base cost, then I have the sold price with shipping, then the shipping cost, then the fees, the revenue, and the profit. Now you'll notice that with the Amazing Spider-Man lot, the base cost is much higher than everything else. That's because the way that, and I talked about this in the last video, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on it, but this is the way that I address the initial cost of the books. I treat each book as being 1 penny, just so it makes it easy for tracking on my profit loss type sheets. And then for the first X number of sales that I have, approximately half the sale goes towards that initial base cost until I get down to the point where everything is covered except that penny. That makes it so that once I reach that point, everything else is just a penny per book. And then I'm not really worried as much about the sold price for things like auctions. That's why I don't have much of a problem auctioning these off and having some go lower than what I might have expected. So the Amazing Spider-Man lot was the last one that was necessary to take care of the original base cost of this collection. And that's why everything else, you can see the Star Trek lot was 5 books, the base cost was 5 cents. The Eternals lot was 4 books, base cost was 4 cents, and so on. Now, the sold prices with shipping, that was something else I had questions about. People asked, why did I do free shipping? Why don't I charge for shipping? I do charge for shipping. I'm just not showing that on here. I'm showing the price that they bid plus the shipping as a total price there. So I always charge for shipping. I used to originally not charge for shipping. I gave free shipping when I first started selling on eBay, but I found that it really didn't help my sales at all. So I just started charging for shipping because it was costing me a ton of money as you add it up over the course of the year. Let's say, for example, you sell 100 books and it's $6. If it's just an individual book, it's like $6 per book to ship. that's $600. That adds up over the course of the year. So it may not seem like a lot on one individual sale, but it really adds up as you have more and more sales. And as you get to more expensive books, heavier things, that shipping cost goes up. Now, with the shipping cost, you will also notice there's a very big difference in my shipping between what I have here and what I had in the last video. And this was thanks to someone that watches the channel and commented. So the Spider-Man lot was 32 books, so it had to go into a large box. That was just the price that it was to ship. But everything else, what the person recommended, because I don't normally sell lots, so this is really useful information for me, what they recommended was just have everything as 12 books or less, and then use a legal flat rate priority envelope from the post office. And so you just go to USPS.com, because they don't usually have them at that size envelope at the post office. You go to USPS.com, you order them, they're free. They ship them to you for free. And then you can take a Gemini mailer and you fit up to 12 books into that Gemini mailer. I use 12 books and a piece of cardboard on each side, and that fits in there. And then that will fit into a legal flat rate envelope, which makes it a fixed cost of just $7.90 for the shipping. That was a big concern I had in my first set of sales, because I had some that went very low, and then if they were shipping across the country, the shipping costs alone were $15 to $20. But with this, if I limit the size of the lots to 12 books, it ensures that my shipping cost is going to be at most $7.90. Now, if the total lot is maybe just 2 books, I don't know, 3 might be under it. If it's under £1 in the Gemini mailer, you can ship first class. But if it goes over £1, which I've noticed 4 books, I believe, went over £1, then you have to use priority, and then the $7.90 generally makes sense. Don't ship media mail. Even if it's cheaper, don't ship media mail. Now, then I've got the fees. For the Amazing Spider-Man lot was a PayPal fee. That's why for the $235, it was about 3% or $7.03. All the rest of them were eBay fees. And that fee includes the $1.99 promotion that I chose to use for each of those auctions. And we've got the revenue, which was my total take home in dollars when you've got the sold price minus shipping minus fees. And the profit is when you back out the initial base cost, which for most of these now is just a cent per book. So now let's look at the totals. So my total sold price was $740.53 in the first video. This one was $543 for a total sales of $1,283. Shipping costs, first video was $145.57. This one was $96.80 for a total of $242.37. Fees, $98.80 in the first video, $66.27 in this one. We're at $165.07 in fees. Then we've got total revenue. This is one of the ones that's very important to me because this is what I can use to buy more comics. First video was $496.26. This video, $372.90, meaning total I had $869.16 to buy more comics. Then the profit, which from the perspective of this isn't quite as important. It is important from a tax perspective. So you do need to track that because that's what you pay taxes on, minus any business fees, that kind of thing. And so my total profit was $387.69 in the first video, $267.95 in this video. So that's $655.64. But like I said, most important thing right now for me is that revenue, because that is what I can use to buy more books. Before I get into those new books that I picked up, what I paid for them, what I think they're worth, all that kind of thing, I thought I would cover some of the questions that I had from the prior video. The first one was about selling fees. I had some people ask about selling fees, how it impacts how much you make on the sale, that kind of thing. Because a lot of people, they don't like to pay eBay that fee. They don't like to pay PayPal that fee. But for me, eBay especially, they are providing a very valuable service. They're connecting me with potential buyers that otherwise would be very difficult to do, very cumbersome to do. So I am totally fine paying eBay those fees so that they can connect me to those buyers. Now, it doesn't mean I want them to keep raising them, which has been happening, because it then does, it eats more and more into your margins, but I am fine paying a fee for this service. Now, There are a couple ways to help reduce your fee. One of them is to get an eBay store. You can't get the lowest tier one. You have to get the next one, which I think is called basic. If you get the basic one, I think it drops your fee from like 14% to 12%. So you save a lot just getting that. It costs something like $21 or $22 a month. So you just need to do the numbers for yourself, and if you're selling enough to make the store worthwhile. Now, you also have something like PayPal as an option. If you're, say, on Instagram or something like that and you're selling to people directly, you could use friends and family, which is no fees. However, PayPal has been banning accounts and holding people's money hostage as a result of it if they are abusing friends and family for business sales. So I highly recommend using goods and services. That is what I use. I use goods and services. That is about 3%. That's going to cost you. And so, yeah, it's a lot less than eBay, but you are doing all the legwork then to get the sale, to coordinate with people. And in reality, what I've generally found is that people kind of expect to pay less than the eBay price anyway. So you might as well just list them on eBay, and if somebody reaches out to you, cut them a deal, and then they get a deal, everybody's happy. But that's what I like to do. I primarily use eBay, but if somebody reaches out to me, I will sell on someplace like Instagram, but I will use goods and services, and then I have that about 3% fee. Now, the other thing to remember if you're selling on Instagram is that there is a lot more legwork. You've got to be constantly reposting things. You've got to establish a brand there, get a bunch of followers, all this kind of thing. Whereas with eBay, it's more of a set it and forget it. So, it all depends how you want to spend your time and if it's worth that extra percentage to do all that work on another platform like Instagram. Now, the other area that I wanted to touch on before I go into the new books that I picked up, and this is one quite a few people asked about, and this is taxes, because a lot of people seem to think that they can just avoid taxes if their sales aren't being reported, if you're under that threshold on eBay, but you are still responsible to pay taxes on your sales if you have profits, whether it is reported to the IRS or not. You are responsible to pay for those taxes. First, I want to caveat that I am not a tax expert. I use one of the online tax tools generally to do my taxes. So, take this advice with a grain of salt. If you're really concerned about something, go consult a tax expert, something like that. But you have a few options for how you might want to approach this as setting up a business. My personal recommendation is, if you're just starting out, and even if you're pretty established, is a sole proprietorship. It's really the easiest way to go. It just ends up being an addition onto your existing taxes. You just do what's called a Schedule C. And if you're using one of these online tools, or if you have someone you pay to do your taxes, they're going to know what that is. And that's where you put in all your sales and your expenses and all that kind of stuff, and it figures out how much you have to pay on your taxes. Now, what that means is that your tax rate that you're going to pay there is effectively what your normal income tax rate is. So if you have some other job, some other primary job, whatever your tax rate is from that is what you're going to pay on these sales. So what you can do is, if you know what that tax rate is, you can just set aside that percentage. A general safe rule of thumb is usually 25%. If you set aside 25% of the profit, remember, you don't have to set aside 25% of the sale. You're not paying taxes on the sale, you're paying taxes on the profit. So you set aside 25% of the profit, and then that is usually going to be sufficient to cover you unless you start getting into huge amounts of sales where you start bumping up in tax brackets. Now, you also have the option to pay that all at the end of the year, or to pay it as quarterly tax estimates. It depends what your current tax situation is. If you're getting a big refund already, you could just let it go as part of your normal taxes if it's just going to eat into your refund. If you are not getting a refund, then you will probably want to pay quarterly taxes, because otherwise you could end up with some type of penalty at the end of the year. Quarterly taxes are pretty easy. You just go to one of the IRS's websites, you fill out what you want to pay them and some tax information, some personal information about yourself, and send it in. And then you just have to make sure you record what that was so that you remember to put it down on your tax form at the next year, because then you will have already paid that amount of your taxes going into the next year. That's what I do, and I think it's just a pretty easy, straightforward way to go. So one other thing I just wanted to touch on with respect to taxes is, I think it's often a roadblock for a lot of people to sell. It's like they're afraid to pay taxes. You see the same type of thing when people are buying and selling stocks. People are afraid to sell because they're afraid to pay the tax guy. But the reality is, you're only paying taxes on your profit. Your taxes are never going to exceed or even come close to the profit that you make. I mean, yeah, maybe it's 30% or 40% or something, depending on what your income bracket is, but that still means that's 60%, that you're taking home with you, and you get to back out things like expenses that come with the business, all that kind of stuff. So the reality is, if you are selling and you're making money, you're paying taxes, it's not a bad thing. It means you're actually doing well and you're making money. The only reason you wouldn't pay taxes at all is if you're losing money. So in reality, paying taxes, not necessarily a bad thing. But all right, so we touched on the taxes side of stuff. Let's get into the new books that I picked up. So like I said earlier in the video, I had a total revenue of $869.16. I bought 2 books that I talked about in the prior video. Those were $130, which means I have $739.16 to buy more comics with. So what I ended up picking up is I bought 7 books from 2 different Instagram sales, plus I got 2 free throw-in books that one of the sellers put in with the books that I purchased. So let's talk about the first seller. So that was 5 books total. This was all just $85 shipped. So the first 4 were these. Wolverine 1 through 4, limited series. 3 of them are the newsstands. The Wolverine 1 is the direct edition. They're all kind of in the about like 6.0 range. I'd say one of them is like the 3 is a little bit better. It has a really light, let's see if I can get it to show up on camera. Yeah, right here. Let's see. Right there, you can see that bend, but it doesn't really look like it breaks color or anything. It would probably press out pretty well, but this is probably the nicest one, maybe like a 6.57. And then I think the lowest one is this one, just has a little more denting to it, and it's probably like a 5 or a 5.5. But one thing to be aware of with this lot was that the Wolverine 1 had a very small amount of color touch on it. So what I've been thinking about is what I want to do with that. So do I want to cut off the piece that has the color touch on it? And I'll show you. So I feel like showing this is always helpful because then it'll help people recognize it. So here it is. And the very small amount of color touch is right down on this bottom corner. Let's see if you can, get it to focus on it.
2,000 years later.
Right there. So can you see that black line right by my finger in the corner? That is bleed through from the front cover where there was like a little crease right down there, and somebody just filled it in with marker or pen or whatever it is. And so I'm a little torn on what I want to do with that, because I could just cut it off, and that's fine. That's totally fine. If you send it into CGC or CGC's restoration removal, that's all they would do. You can't scrape that off because it's bled through. You have to cut the piece off. And so I could just cut that piece off. And this book was probably kind of like a 6.0 range, something like that. And with that little piece cut off the corner, it's probably still in the 5s, 5.55, something like that. And so it's really not going to hurt it that much. And then when I list the book, I don't have to say there's restoration on it, because that's always something that'll turn some people off. It will immediately eliminate some buyers if you have to say that there's restoration on the book. So I haven't decided yet if I'm going to clip that little corner off, or I'll just list it saying, there's restoration in that corner. It can just be cut off. I haven't decided yet. But for this lot of 4 books, I went on eBay, looked up some comps. I think around $150, give or take, maybe a little more, a little less, something like that, is about what these 4 would go for. So that alone was already, great to pick up. Then also came with this book right here. Now, this is Wolverine number 8, super popular cover, awesome cover. I've never actually owned this book before, so I thought that was pretty fun to get a nice copy of this one. And this is a really, really nice presenting copy. There's a small little stain or something like that on the back, but I think that this one could still probably hit a 9. Maybe it does a little better, just depends, but this is a super nice copy. Let's see if you can see. There's just a couple little spine ticks. You can see one there, but overall, a really, really nice copy of this book. There's also a little I believe is a printer defect on Hulk's face. Let's see if I can get that to show up. See that little right there? But I've seen that on other books that have gotten 9/8, so I'm almost positive that that's a printer defect. Now, the other thing with this one that is also cool is that this is also a newsstand. And this book is from 1989, so this is definitely getting to where newsstands are less common, since some people like to talk about how common the newsstand is at that point. But you can see, super nice copy of this one. A couple little things, but easily pressed out if you know someone wanted to get this book pressed. But here's the back. This is what's a little more difficult about this one is the newsstand is on the back. So that's how you know it's a newsstand. There's a little color rub down at the bottom staple. Then you can see what appears to be like a little stain or something right here, maybe a fingerprint or something like that. But overall, really, really nice copy of this one. So this one in, you know, raw form like this, I think $50 to $65, something along those lines, is what, you know, if it was at like a show or something, they'd probably ask like 100, but $50 to $65 for this one. Then the seller also threw in 2 free books. So we got these 2 books for free. This Our Army at War number 237, which is like a 7.0. It's a really solid copy of this. And then Chamber of Chills number 12. This one's like a 6.0. Again, another pretty solid like Bronze Age horror book. And so each of these I estimate about $10, give or take. So all in all, you know, 100 plus 50 to 65 plus 20, we're at $220 to $235 off of, you know, an $85 initial investment. And then I'll have eBay fees when I sell it, that kind of thing, shipping, all that kind of stuff. But still, I thought that that was a great additional purchase and cool to get the Wolverine 1 through 4 all together. Now, the next 2 books I picked up from another seller on Instagram. These 2 combined were $565. So this was a much more substantial purchase. This is what I've been talking about that I like to get into. I like to get into bigger books. They aren't going to have as big of a return. You know, I'm not like that 85 into say $220 or $230. I'm more than doubling my money, but I'm still having to sell quite a few books to do it. Whereas with these, I might make the same amount of money, but I only have to sell 1. It's not going to be as high of a percentage, but I don't have to list as many books. I don't have to ship as many books, all that kind of thing. So the first one here was Shock Suspense Stories number 11. This is just a cool Johnny Craig cover, and it's actually a really solid presenting copy. It's got some spine wear to it. I think I have it as like a 4.0, something like that. Maybe I get lucky and it hits a 4.5, because this side of the book, and I think the back too was very nice. But let's take it out of the bag so we can take a close look at this one. But so here it is, you know, pretty solid copy of this. It has some little bits of denting and things, but that's pretty normal with these. I'm not generally concerned about stuff that can be handled with pressing. It's just the, you know, the color breaks that I'm really concerned with. And so you can see on the spine there, you can see those color breaks. See the back looks really nice. Here's the back. There's yeah, like I think that's just like a little printer crease right here. But yeah, back looks really solid. Let's take a look at the opening splash page. But yeah, I think a 4.0, maybe it gets a 4.5, is pretty reasonable for this one. Definitely has some spine wear, but the remainder of the book presents very well. So this one, I estimate its value at around $200, maybe a little more. Now, the other one, this is a cool one to get. So this one is Tales from the Crypt number 35. This is a Jack Davis werewolf cover. Some people consider this the best werewolf cover of the Golden Age. I personally like Tales from the Crypt 46, which is also a Jack Davis cover, but this one is pretty great. I mean, they're both awesome. I love the color scheme on this. I love the way that the werewolf looks. It's really menacing. It's not like this is your friendly neighborhood werewolf. He just like killed this dude in the back there. And so yeah, this is an awesome book. Now, the main issue with this, because if you just saw this, you'd go, wow, like that looks like it's probably like a 6.0 or a 7.0. However, there is some staining to this book. On the back, it's much more pronounced than the front. So I think probably about a 4.0 is where this book is going to go. And so I'd estimate this one in the $650 to $700 range. Maybe it does a little better. But here you go. So you can see out of the Mylar, it's that whole Mylar magic thing. But this is where you can start to see some of that staining on the, here we go, on the werewolf's face right there. But still overall, a very, very solid copy of this. Sharp edges, a little chip out of that corner in the top, but generally very, very presentable copy of this. Now, the main flaws on this book are on the back. So here's where you can see that staining, here and here and here, that kind of thing. So there's definitely some staining to the back of this book that's going to keep it from getting, one of those higher grades, but overall, awesome copy of this. And I have never had a copy of this one either. I have bid on these a number of times. I've wanted to get a copy of this book. So it was fun being able to pick one up as part of, this kind of like this project. So yeah, so this one I estimate at probably $650 to $700. So that's the total for these in the $850 to $900 range off of an initial $565. So the percentage, like I said, isn't nearly as high. That's a return of about $300 minus fees. It's probably a return of around $200, but I just have to sell 2 books. So that's a big plus. I don't have to list tons and tons of books to get that same total return. And the other big plus is when I sell these, then say this one sells, or this one, I immediately am getting $600 or so back to reinvest. I'm not having to sell 5 or 6 different lots to get a few $100 to eventually buy something. That I get a big chunk of money all at once that I can reinvest to buy other books. So overall, I spent $85 on that first lot. I spent $565 on this second lot. That leaves me $89.16 still to buy more comics until I at least sell some more books, which I will be doing soon. I'll put up more eBay auctions, that kind of thing, because I've got to work through the remainder of that Bronze Age collection. And then I also need to list these books. I am considering getting this one graded. I don't know if it's worth it or not. It will really eat into the margins at that point if I get this one pressed and graded and all of that. But I am kind of curious what it'll end up coming back with, because it is such a nice presenting copy. Just has those stains on the back, but stains are killers. Stains are killers for grades. So that's why it might not be worth it for me at this point to put that extra money into grading, but definitely one that I'm considering. All right, I hope you enjoyed that video. That's everything that I've sold since the last video, everything that I've picked up, answered some of the questions from the prior one. If you have more questions that you'd like me to touch on in my next video, make sure to put them in the comments. I will make sure to check them out and I will answer them if I can. If I can't do it in the next video, I'll save them for follow-up videos, because there were some other questions that I had as well in that prior video that I'm going to save to answer in future ones. So again, hope you enjoyed this. If you did, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I've got more videos over here if you'd like to watch some of my other videos, and the subscription button right here. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.